Hey everyone, welcome to our bonus episode from the 300th episode of the Geeks Out Podcast. We're doing some retrospectives at our first year of FlameCon with some wonderful artists. Starting off with Hazel Newlevant. Hey everyone, we are interviewing several artists and creators who were part of the very first FlameCon back in 2015 as part of our celebration, our retrospective of FlameCon and this 300th episode, epic, of the Geeks Out podcast. I am pleased to have join us wonderful artist and creator who was at our very first FlameCon and has also been at other FlameCons as well. All of you collectively, virtually, please welcome Hazel Newlevant.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. The first FlameCon is a fond memory for me, so it's fun to reflect back on it. Yeah, I'm Hazel Newlevant. I'm a cartoonist and editor. You might know me from my graphic novel, No Ivy League, or my graphic novellas, Sugartown, If This Be Sin. I also edited, there we go, the If This Be Sin mini comic was something that I had at the first FlameCon, which I then expanded into an itty bitty book. I also put together the anthologies Comics for Choice and Chainmail Bikini. So that's me.
Awesome. So, as Sophia says on the Golden Girls, picture it. Brooklyn, 2015. We're at the Grand Prospect Hall in Brooklyn, a gaudy, campy, it's a wedding venue is what it was. RIP doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And this is probably the queerest thing that has happened in this venue. And we presented FlameCon the very first year at FlameCon. What are some of your favorite memories from that very first FlameCon?
Oh gosh. Well, the venue was such a gem, this like beautiful old ballroom. I wish that more shows could be held in spaces like that. I've heard a rumor that they had really funny ads for the venue on public access, which adds to the camp factor.
If you have not seen them, please Google Grand Prospect Hall commercial. They make your dreams come true.
And they did. Yeah, the first FlameCon was really beautiful. I mean, it was a small show as these things go, but like the enthusiasm of the participants was just so high. I tend to do indie small shows more so than like a big Comic-Con, but I remember there were cosplayers at the first FlameCon. Yeah, I was very excited about this gender bent tank girl cosplayer. I was like, please, can I get a picture with you?
That is
I
awesome.
also remember a good drag queen Princess Peach and just a lot of like very, very sexy male superheroes. So yeah, it was you could see people's enthusiasm on display that way, even though it's like a small show. It's kind of like being the first couple people on the dance floor, it's brave. I think it was one of the first events, if not the first event, where there were pronoun stickers just provided, which, is just such a great, like, normalizing thing that I think, anything, if there's badges, you might as well have them. Yeah, there were, I don't know, it was just like a really fun gathering of queer comics fans. And there were a lot more like gay men into superheroes than I normally see at said indie conventions. But I, remember, people who I didn't really think were my audience in terms of genre, like still being very enthusiastic and supportive of my work. And I'm pretty sure it was sweaty.
Oh yes, yes. That year, it was an old building, and there were certain assurances that the air condition would be working because this was taking place in June, and the AC was not exactly working per se.
Yeah, it was a warm environment in many ways.
Yes, we definitely put the flaming in FlameCon, so in more
A
ways than one. um, but I mean, if you can believe it, that's been 8 years. It's been 8 years since that first FlameCon. Um, how how have things changed for you in those? I mean, a lot's changed in the world, but like, how have things changed for you? And however you want to share of that, your career or personally, or like.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I at that point I was pretty fresh out of art school, and looking back, I've really done a lot of the things that I had hoped to do in kind of an inchoate form, but I didn't know if they were going to be possible. At that point, I was doing a lot of mini comics, really short stuff. Now I've done a full length graphic novel, No Ivy League, which is 200 pages. And at for some reason at the start of my career, I wasn't, or at the start of my comics making, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to do that. But, now I'm working on my next graphic novel, which is even longer. It's called Queer and How We Got Here. And yeah, the fans are going to like it because it is a combo of autobio using my life to introduce different topics in queer history that I think are really fascinating and help explain the world as it is and that I want to share with people. So yeah, I've really been able to expand on the kinds of mini comics that I was doing at that point, and combine my interest in autobio personal stuff and sharing research based like queer history. And I put out these 2 anthologies. I mean, putting together Chainmail Bikini was a very like I don't know, that was a big accomplishment for I think all the people who helped put it together. And then
It's a lot of, I mean, having, Geeks Out, we've put an anthology together, and we did Serving Pride. It's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of coordination of, with anthologies, of like getting the artists and getting the creators together and all of that. Like it's amazing. That's a lot to be proud of.
yeah, thank you. I mean, I love doing anthologies at this point. I've had the opportunity to work on 3 of them. And then right now I work for A Wave Blue World, the publisher, and they put out a lot of anthologies. And, they're a really fun, like, communal endeavor, speaking of bringing a lot of people together. So, off of that, I was able to get work as an editor for Lion Forge, and then they kind of restructured and laid me off. But, now I can do freelance editing. I can work on this graphic novel, which is like everything that I could really hope to put into a book. So yeah, I've just been building on what I was doing then. And like, I didn't exactly dare to hope or picture like what I would do with all of it. But, you know, I feel pleased. I feel
That's
lucky
great.
and pleased.
That's great. Again, you have, beyond the anthologies, like, you have a lot to be proud of. You starting, in those 12 years, 8 years, being fresh from school, and you've worked with, um, um, big publishing companies, you've seen a lot. So how have you seen the industry change? From your perspective of, someone who was very new to the industry, and having to actually get like a peek behind the curtain, particularly as an editor, um,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like it's kind of two steps forward, one step back, or like I can't really say that there's any factor that's like holistically changed in the past 8 years. I think the biggest thing for indie comics in recent memory was Kickstarter, and like people like Spike Trotman putting their anthologies on Kickstarter. Like, that created a huge movement, but I think that was before 8 years ago. But I mean, other than that, graphic novel sales are continuing to go up every year, which bodes well for people who make comics. And there have definitely been some attempts at pay transparency, talking about the difficulty of making a living as a cartoonist, or, anyone working in illustration. Like Lightbox tried to like collate people's pay rates, but I can't say that it's holistically changed anything. Likewise, there've been, movements toward like out uh outing, I guess, people who were, being predatory in
right,
the comics community. And
right.
But I don't think that's necessarily entirely transformed anything either.
I mean,
And
it's there are, I wouldn't say necessarily transformed, but it's a, as you said, it's the two steps forward, kind of one step back in a sense,
right, yeah, that's true. It is a step towards like, in this community and industry, like there, what behavior is not going to be tolerated and have people sitting silently by.
right,
Yeah, but it's still hard to make a living as a cartoonist. I think Patreon has changed the game somewhat in terms of being able to directly support creators. A lot of the times, like, that's a better way for people to make a living, or at least
right,
enhance their income. But now we got to balance it with the lack of shows. That's been hard for people who make a lot of income doing sort of the show circuit.
yeah,
And creators are dealing with like different platforms that they want to get on, either getting into NFTs or banning certain content. It's really tough if you're making like erotic
mm-hmm.
content of any kind, which is a big part of queer comics and like the history of queer comics. It's hard to find consistent hosting for that. So yeah, people are kind of finding their way with like independently publishing and distributing stuff, but it's imperfect still.
Yeah, it's, I think, and we see this on the macro and the micro level, where there are incremental changes that happen on all levels, and I think we all get impatient because we want we want it to be how it should be. And I think we at times forget about how sometimes things do just move this slowly. And it's those big moments where the flashy moments where there's a big change that happens that we all get like attracted to, but like long lasting change happens slow, unfortunately. Not to say that we shouldn't keep pushing for those big changes.
Right. But it's good to be able to appreciate the progress.
Yeah. I mean, considering, not to bring this back to FlameCon,
but to bring it back to FlameCon,
though, considering 8 years ago, there were not many real queer conventions that were happening. There was a few, and there was BentCon before FlameCon, which unfortunately did not continue. But there are other queer conventions that happen now throughout the country. I mean, FlameCon, we were only expecting maybe 1,100 people the first year, and it ended up being like 2,200 people. And it just keeps growing. And that's the thing, is like, people want this to happen. People want this to exist. And, we're all, we talk about this. FlameCon is 100% volunteer run. And it's because we all want it to exist, and we're just manifesting it.
Yeah, I mean, you have more perspective on what other cons have come up, maybe, but that's true, and that's definitely something that like I've really appreciated and benefited from, like that it's kind of a whole scene in this way. I know there's the queers and comics conference that I've gone to that Justin Hall and Jen Camper put together, I believe. I mean,
Yep.
that's just, one of many things. Or there's also queer zine fests, and I guess
Haven Con in Austin. There is Flaming River Con. So yeah, there's little spots here and there, bright spots.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like probably partly because of FlameCon, like I'm really able to put like queer community and comics community together. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Like even, the presence of pronoun stickers like really like normalized to me and other people, that you can just like put out like, hey, here's what I want you to call me, and not have be a big deal. I've made a lot of trans friends through comics, and just the scene made it seem approachable to me to also be like, hey, I also want to be called they, and then it turned out to be kind of difficult, but not as difficult as it might have been, and like I literally know so many other non-binary cartoonists, and yeah, I don't know, it's cool to put those things together. And also it's like I don't just to have in common with somebody that we're both gay. Like I can meet people who, hey, we're both gay and we draw and we're into like the same kind of books, and that's really fun.
Well, speaking of that, what are you getting down and nerdy with? What are you consuming in pop culture right now?
I have been watching a lot of weird movies. I gotta recommend this site, 366weirdmovies.com. It's my favorite. It's just like a movie review blog, but they have this list of the canonical weird movies according to them. And I mean, it's gotten me to watch different queer stuff too. Like, there's John Waters movies on there. And yeah, I don't know. That's given me some sort of goals to explore art that I wouldn't otherwise necessarily like make a priority of seeing, because I'm like, oh, it's on the list. I gotta check that out. So
That's
yeah, I've been getting down with those movies. Also for the FlameCon fan, I don't think this is on the list, but I would recommend the movie Naked Killer, which is a movie from Hong Kong from the 90s. And it's about lesbian assassins. And it's just so fun. And
perfect.
yeah, I think that's going to probably appeal to a lot of people who are into FlameCon.
That's awesome. Um, uh, in anything that you're reading right now, or
Oh gosh, I'm reading mostly queer history, like different stuff, researching my book. The book Female Husbands was a really good book I read recently about like historical trans men, basically. Um, yeah, so I've been
that's
I've been getting down with stuff like that when I do have time to read books.
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for giving us a glimpse back at FlameCon 2015. Um, Hazel, where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at H Newlevant. My Instagram is just at Newlevant, newlevant.com. It's a unique last name. So if you look that up, that's me. And yeah, I'm chugging along on my book that's supposed to come out in 2024. But if you want to peep some sketches or some quotations from books that I find particularly interesting, uh, yeah, keep in touch. And
Awesome.
thank you for having me.
Thank you. We really appreciate it, and I hope to see you at FlameCon in the not too distant future.
Me too. I'm excited to table at shows again. I really miss that.
We miss you.
Oh,
Well, wish you love and the best, and stay tuned. We're gonna have another interview coming up in just a moment. If you stay tuned.
thanks. Bye, everybody.